Hello everyone, this is again Dr. Kim. Welcome to my channel. Today we'll explore one of the unique parables in Luke. It's called the Good Samaritan. This is really well known. So many people, even non-Christians, I guess, know about this parable. So we'll study this parable today. So here we are, Good Samaritan. What can you expect from this parable? As I said, this is one of well-known parables of Jesus, but also found only in Luke. So Lucan unique parable. And actually Luke 10, 25, 29 is a precursor to this parable. So we'll need to read this paragraph. Just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, what's written in the law? What do you read there? He answered, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, you have given the right answer. Do this and you will live. But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? And who is my neighbor? Because of this question, Jesus gives the parable, right? Jesus answers him through this parable of we call Good Samaritan, that appearing in verse 30 through 37. So we need to read the very parable of Samaritan in chapter 10 here. Jesus replied, right? Replied. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. Just a man, right? An ordinary man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers. It may happen, fell into the hands of robbers who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Very miserable, desperate situation this guy is placed. Verse 31, now by chance, right? It just happened. By chance, a priest, very religious leader, right? A priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he noticed him, right? He passed by on the other side. This is a kind of a weird and shocking, right? He's supposed to stop by him and checking what's going on here, right? He is the person, he has to extend the mercy to this guy, but he passed by on the other side. So, likewise, a Levite. Oh, likewise, a Levite. When he came to the place and saw him and passed by on the other side, exactly the same as a priest. You know, who is Levite? Levite also, right, devoted to the work of the temple or religious job duty. Now 33. Now this is kind of another surprising moment. But a Samaritan is non-Jew, right? Non-Jew, just traveler. He happened to travel on this road. A Samaritan while traveling, right? Traveling. He's not a local, person in this area. Samaritan guy traveling came near him, and when he saw him, yes, he noticed him, but he did not pass by on the other side. He was moved with pity. Pity. pity, like a mercy. His whole body is moved with the pity. So what happened now? He went to him, right? He went to him because of the pity he had, and bandaged his wounds, and having poured oil and wine on them, oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal. Oh, where? He put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, not big money, 2 days wage money, denarius, but 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper and said, take care of him. And when I come back, I'll repay you whatever more you spend. Now, 36, Jesus asking, right? After giving this story, very vivid story, which of these three, right? A priest and Levite and Samaritan, which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? Now this guy said, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. So, interpretive issues. Historically, allegorical interpretation has dominated the church and academia for almost 2,000 years. For a long, long time, we are just accustomed to reading this wonderful parable with allegory only. You know, allegory might work, but when we read this parable allegorically only, we can reduce the intended, the challenging meaning by Jesus. Because allegory seeks to find a deeper spiritual meaning of the parable by finding arbitrary correspondence between the parable content and external things. That's good attempt, but that kind of a deeper spiritual meaning is not intended when Jesus gives this parable. For example, here, Origen, right, one of church fathers early on, he described the allegory as follows. He read this parable with allegory, in other words. He says, the man was going down is Adam. You know what? Adam is not appearing in this parable at all. Where do you see Adam in this parable? The man who's going down from Jerusalem to Jericho is Adam? Well, you can read that way, but that is not obvious, in this parable. Most surprisingly, he says, Jerusalem is paradise. Come on, Jerusalem is just Jerusalem, just big city, capital in this time, right? Jerusalem, you can imagine many ways as Jerusalem, but in this parable, Jerusalem is not stated as a paradise. And Jericho is the world. No way, right? Jericho is Jericho, a city nearby, the sea, resort place like that, lowland place. Jericho is Jericho. And more surprisingly, the robbers are hostile powers. The robbers are hostile powers? That's really, stretched, right? So, we don't see that correspondence between the robbers and hostile powers. The priest is the law. Come on. Priest is a priest. The priest is not the law. The Levite is the prophet. And the Samaritan is Christ. It is really weird. Now, if you follow this logic of allegory, right? Jesus you know, talking about himself in the guise, right? So Samaritan is himself. But I don't think that's really a point, okay? Jesus simply talking about certain things in real life, okay? He made up a story to convey certain moral challenge. So this is good. I mean, Samaritan is Samaritan, traveler, okay? A different ethnicity from Jews. The woods are disobedience, and the beast is the Lord's body. The inn, which accepts all who wish to enter, is the church. Now the inn is inn, right? People sleep there or spending, the night there. Where do we see? How do you know the inn is the church? That kind of allegory is too much, too stretched, too arbitrary. The manager of the inn is the head of the church, to whom its care has been entrusted. And the fact that the Samaritan promises he will return represents the Savior's second coming. As you see, all these are really arbitrary, and we don't see this kind of a correspondence in the real, in the parable proper. So allegorical meaning, although it is, giving us some sense of meaning in the sense that, if you're early church people, maybe you may read that way. But from the context of Jesus doesn't seem to, give this parable with that kind of a deeper spiritual meaning. But actually, the parable is a story that can happen in real life. Jesus talking about everyday life. A certain man, right, may meet the robbers all of a sudden, and danger. He fell into the hands of the robbers, and there's a danger situation, Real story. We have to see what really happened in real life. So if you remember Marcus Borg's definition of the parable, which I love it, a parable is a story cast alongside of life. This is the key, cast alongside of life. What kind of life? The life on the scene, right? Not spiritual life, the real life, for the sake of leading the audience. Whose audience? Jesus' audience. For the sake of leading the audience, Jesus' audience, to see something differently. Differently about what? The rule of God, the kingdom of God, in the here and now, in Jesus' time, right? So parable. It's kind of a real life story, but not the same as a real life, but nevertheless, it's kind of a real life made up story. So here in this parable, the situation is quite clear, right? Several characters, what they are doing, what kind of situation they are in. A man, probably Jewish man, ordinary man, any man. He was robbed by robbers on the road, It can happen back then. There were a lot of travelers and robbers in a remote area, And he was half dead, As was stripped and beaten. And half dead means it's really, nothing he could do. He's dying. Then a priest and Levite, by chance, they passed by. They looked at him, but they did not give any help. They did not even stop by. It's really weird. They're supposed to help, but they noticed him, but they did not stop by either. Just passed by on the other side. Why? Do they have good reasons? Because they are priests, so holy job, he can't touch corpse or something unholy things? No, that's not the reason. Why? Because he was priest in Jerusalem, right? Temple is there, There's nothing that he should do in Jericho. no temple there, right? So he has no good excuses. Just that is not, for religious reasons, but passed by because they didn't have a pity. Somehow problem is ethical, moral. But a Samaritan is not a Jew. He saw him and stopped by and did everything he could, He came down from his animal, right? And saw what's happening and bandaged wounds, poured oil and wine on them, okay? So took him to the inn, asking the innkeeper to take care of this guy. Even, I will repay you if you spend more. But this is really unusual character, which is not supposed to keep health because he's not one of the Jews. He was a traveler, but he was moved with pity. Moved with pity. He could not stop. He could not pass by without doing anything because of pity. So he gave full care of him. Now Jesus' question, finally, at the end of the parable, right? This question of Jesus twists the lawyer's question early on. The lawyer asked, who is my neighbor? In other words, whom should I help? Whom should I help? Where should I go to help? Who is my neighbor? Who is worthy of my mercy, so to speak? But now Jesus asking different way, asking question a different way. Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? So the answer is quite clear, right? The one who showed him mercy, which means a Samaritan is the neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers. Let's see a little bit more detail here. In-depth study. What's wrong with religious leaders, a priest and Levite? As I said earlier, the problem is not religious duty-driven, jobs they had to do, so they could not help him immediately because they're too busy. They should go to the, somewhere to do religious duties. That's not the case because, as I said, these religious people now are done with some religious work in Jerusalem already. Now they are done there and they are going down to Jericho, right? So there's no reason they have to make haste. They just passed by. The only reason we could think of that is what? They lack pity. That's it. So simple. They lack pity. They are so religiously minded people, but in real life, they do not have a pity toward, the man who really needed help outside of the temple. In real life, they did not have pity. That's the problem for these leaders. And a Samaritan, as we saw earlier, right? He was moved with the pity, as planknizomai in Greek, okay? Moved with the pity. Beyond anything, nothing comes in his pity other than, right, just compassion, just kind of empathy with this man. Ethnicity, regardless of ethnicity, or religion, or gender, age, regardless of anything, nothing comes in to prevent him from extending mercy to him. No reasons other than pity, other than mercy he had. Now Jesus gives a new definition, right? Jesus asking, who is a neighbor to this guy who needed help? You know, the lawyer's definition of neighbor was what? Who is my neighbor? In other words, who are worthy of my love, mercy, or compassion? But Jesus says, no, you should be a neighbor to the needy. You can do to others who need help. Don't try to look at who are your neighbors, but you can become a neighbor to the person who needs help. So, you know, this parable is unique to Luke. So Luke on mission, as we know, that is what? Chapter 19:10, even Jesus said, the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost. Seek out and to save the lost. Who are the lost? All kinds of people, especially marginalized people, right? Marginalized people. The poor, tax collectors, sinners, foreigners, all kinds of Gentiles, right? So seek out and save the lost. Certainly, right? This guy who was traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho was lost out of the blue, all of a sudden. He was dying, half dead, nothing he could do. At that very moment, he needed a real neighbor. So that neighbor happened to be a Samaritan, right? So regardless of any other kind of determinant, okay, ethnicity, religion, whatsoever, we don't care all of those things in this situation, because the most important thing is to seek out and to save the lost. Okay, so the lost person can be with us. I mean, it just can happen anywhere, from Jerusalem to Jericho, or from Jericho to Jerusalem, or from Galilee to Jerusalem, right? Samaria. So if we think about this kind of a situation of the parable, right, we can apply this kind of thing even today, In our community and society, there are all kinds of the lost people who need salvation, who need escape, who need shelter, who need all kinds of protection and justice and peace. So what can we do? We should be a neighbor to those who need, okay, regardless of anything. So that's probably what Jesus really challenging with this parable. So again, the point is, when the lawyer asking, who is my neighbor? But Jesus reverses that question. Don't ask that question, but you should be a neighbor to others who need your hand. Thanks so much for watching me, but actually I have the last screen here, a reflection. What do you say about the traditional allegorical reading of this parable? I think that's not good. What's wrong with the priest and the Levite? Think about it. What's wrong with them? Describe a Samaritan's detailed care of the robbed man, right? So you can follow, details in the story there, from A to Z. I'm just amazed by that detailed care by this guy, from head to toe, so to speak, okay? In every possible ways. He's very detailed guy, taking care of a man from A to Z, kind of process, full care. Any thoughts about the new definition of a neighbor? What do you think, okay, about the neighbor? I mean, what is neighbor? So definition of the neighbor is another item that you and I need to further think about. Thank you. This is really last slide, and thanks for watching. And if you like this video, please like it. And I also want you to subscribe to this channel. I hope to see you with the other video. Thanks so much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.